Imagine losing $900,000 on what you thought was the perfect business idea. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me with Wingstop. Today, I'm going to tell you the full story of how I lost almost $1 million and what you can learn from my mistakes so you don't have to make them yourself. Whether you're thinking about starting a business or you're just curious, this story is about resilience, and trust me, it gets real. I was in my mid 20s and life was good. I already had a profitable Amazon business that was generating solid cash flow. It was my cash cow. I had built something that gave me not just financial freedom, but time freedom too. I didn't need to be tied down to 9 to 5 or stuck working late hours. I could work from anywhere and take time off whenever I wanted. And like any entrepreneur with that kind of freedom, I started looking for the next big opportunity. One day, a friend from college hit me up with the idea that felt like, man, a blast from the past, opening a Wingstop franchise. We had all spent many late nights during our college days eating their wings, especially after partying. I can still remember biting into those hot, juicy barbecue wings. It was the perfect post-drinking food. Back then, the only thing on our mind was having a good time, but now all I could think about was how much money I could make selling wings. I did what any entrepreneur would do. I reached out to Wingstop franchise team to get all the details. The opportunity sounded incredible. They told me the franchise fee was $10,000 per store for development. You need a net worth of $1.2 million with at least $600,000 in cash on hand. I got that. Plus, there were ongoing fees like royalty fees at 6%, 4% marketing fee, 1% local ad and promotion fee, and a few other small, requirement of fees. To someone in my position, I got a cash cow business from Amazon. It felt doable, and the numbers, man, they look great. According to Wingstop corporate owned stores, each one was pulling in about 20 to 25% profit margin on repeat. Dozens of locations generating a quarter of their revenue in profit. And it seemed like a money-making machine, I thought. This is perfect. I could hire a general manager, a GM to run it, sit back, collect the profit. I wouldn't have to be there. It sounded like an ultimate passive income play. Oh, how wrong I was. So my excitement hit a whole new level when I attended their Wingstop on-site presentation here in Dallas, Texas, their headquarters here. So it was easy for me to just show up and learn everything I can about the franchise and the business model. And of course, I was ready to learn everything I needed to know. It was a week-long training session, and we done several training sessions before and presentation before. And we went to this last presentation where I dove into the operation of the business. I was looking forward to it. Imagine it was the final step before opening my own store. But let me tell you, those 7 days were no joke. It was nonstop work. We were cooking and frying chicken for hours on end, learning the ins and out of the kitchen. You think running a restaurant meant making money right away, but the truth is, it turns out it starts with learning how to make the food. And then on top of that, I had an accident. Man, one day while cutting carrots, yes, carrot, I sliced off the tip of my ring finger there. I had to get it cauterized shut. Man, it was painful. My finger was throbbing, blood was shooting everywhere. Everybody was looking at me crazy. I was, standing there thinking like, is this really what I signed up for? Like, you ever thought about that? But believe it or not, that experience didn't deter me at all. I wasn't backing down. The potential profit margin kept playing in my head, and I told myself it would be all right and it'd be worth it once the business was up and running. I was committed. I already invested time, energy, and money. There was no turning back now. I could think was once the Wingstop opened, it's going to be smooth selling. But here's the thing. Reality doesn't care about your plans. Running a restaurant franchise is a whole different game than I ever expected. First, the daily operation hit me like a brick. Managing employees, keeping inventory in check, dealing with rent and overhead. Man, it was nonstop, and I had no idea how much work it really takes to keep a restaurant running smoothly. I remember thinking, as long as I work hard, things will work out. But it turns out hard work isn't enough if you're not prepared for the challenges ahead. I wasn't ready for the constant stress of putting out fires every day. From staff turnovers, man, I was firing people left and right. I was hiring people, training all the time, to food waste, to people stealing from me, like cases of chicken they were walking out in the back. I had cameras recording of this. And it was a never-ending battle, to be honest. So here where things start getting real. And not in a good way. That moment when you realize something is slipping through your fingers and no matter what you do, you can't seem to stop it. That's exactly where I was. At first, things seemed okay. Man, the grand opening seemed solid. People were showing up, customers were coming in. They bought the wings, left great reviews. I thought, this is it. This is the success I was waiting for. But after the initial excitement faded, the harsh reality set in. The numbers just weren't adding up. I was losing money, and it was starting to stack up. The cost was relentless. I'm talking about rent, inventory, payroll, utilities, advertising, royalty fees. It's all added up so fast, faster than I expected. And despite the money coming in, I was struggling to keep this store floating. I had to put my own money in. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just the expense. The people running the store became a huge problem as well. So I had hired this general manager to run the store since I couldn't be there all the time. I was hoping to be more laid back and chilling at home. I trusted him to keep things going, but turns out he was treating the place like it was his personal playground. He was giving food away, letting someone else, like a employee, run the day-to-day operation while he was focusing on his own side hustle. He didn't care about the business like I did. It wasn't until things started slipping that I realized how bad it had got. I mean, we started getting a bunch of negative reviews. Flying back to New Orleans just to fire him. And I thought, all right, let's get this store back on track. But it wasn't just him. This was the beginning of a cycle that would repeat for years. I fired over 300 plus employees one year. Yeah, you heard me right. Like, I'm talking about a stack of W-2s of like 300 plus employees. Man, nobody was doing their job. It was just that area didn't have the right type of employees or the people with the right attitude. And it felt like every time I turned my back, something went wrong. I had no choice but to take over everything myself. I started working 12-hour days, waking up at 7 a.m. and not finishing until 2 a.m. just to close the store. I was frying chicken, cleaning up, doing everything in between. The dream I had owning a Wingstop franchise and letting it run on autopilot, well, that was gone. That's out the window now. It was all me. I had to give up everything. I stopped working out. I gained weight because I was eating too much chicken, fried chicken especially, which was a huge part of my life. The working out, I had to give that up because I was so tired. I didn't have time for anything but the store. I was frying chicken wings every day, working overtime with no pay, and still the store wasn't performing. I was pouring every ounce of my energy into it, but it felt like it was just sinking deeper and deeper, and so was my mental strength. And the hardest part, it felt like no matter how hard I worked, it wasn't enough. Financially, things weren't improving. The costs kept coming, rent, payroll, franchise fee, and I was barely making enough to keep the doors open. I was burning through my own cash and saving, and the pressure was starting to break me. Then there was this one particular day that completely pushed me to my limit. I remember this day. It's the worst day of my life. The day I decided it was time to throw in the towels. I had been working for 2 straight weeks, 10 to 12 hours a day, opening a store at 8 a.m. and closing it around 1 to 2 in the morning. I was training another general manager since the last 2 didn't work out and trying to get the business back on track. I have flown to New Orleans so many times I lost count, and each trip taking time away from my wife and newborn baby back in Dallas. And it was a Friday night. I got home around 1:30 in the morning, man, absolutely drained. I had spent like the entire day cooking, cleaning, mopping, wiping, taking care of customers, training new employees, firing employees, a bunch of random stuff. My hair smelled like grease, my clothes reeked of fried chicken, and my hands and arms were covered in burn mark from just dropping chicken in the bucket in this 200-degree oil fryer. But on this particular night, I noticed the towels were piling up. I had tried to save some money by canceling the commercial towel washing service. Big mistake. So I packed up the dirty towels in my white Tundra and drove them back to the place I was staying, which was my friend's house. I got home around 2 a.m., threw the towel in the washer, then took a shower. Afterward, I ate a quick dinner. I set the timer, hopped into bed, went to sleep. Then the unimaginable thing happened. I woke up to smoke alarm going off. You know that noise, like beep, 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 beep. When I opened my eyes, it started burning really bad. I jumped out of bed, groggy and panicking. The house was filling up with smoke. I thought it was on fire. Every breath felt like I was inhaling pepper gas. My eyes stung so bad I could barely see. I finally was able to stumble into the garage where the dryer was sitting. The smoke was pouring out of it, but thankfully it wasn't a fire. It turns out the heavy grease and hot sauce from the towels had caused them to smolder in the dryer. The smoke was filled with pepper-like particles that made it almost impossible to breathe or see. As it turned out, the dryer was about 30 years old and didn't have a thermostat to shut it off when it gets overheated. The towel had literally started to catch fire inside the dryer. I had to open every door and windows of the house, grab a bucket of water, and throw it into the dryer to put out the tiny flame that's forming inside. The house reeked of smoke and pepper for days. I remember standing there, eyes burning, lungs full of smoke, drenched in sweat, thinking, how did I get here? I had lost control of everything. My time, my money, my health. I was so deep into this business that I didn't know if I could dig myself out. So after airing out the house and putting out the fire, the adrenaline subsided, it started faded, and I started to reflect. Was it worth it? Was it worth all the stress to try and make an extra 200K, 300K? At that moment, the answer was clear. No, it was not. I had a business back home that was making money on autopilot. 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure, minimal effort. I had a team that worked effectively and wasn't stuck in the day-to-day grind. So why was I here burning myself out? It became painfully obvious I was focused on the money that I lost sight of everything that mattered. It was 4 a.m. By this time, I might have gotten maybe only 45 minutes of sleep before the dry fire happened. Exhausted, frustrated, defeated, I finally went back to bed. The house still smelled like smoky Wingstop hot sauce. And a few hours later, I was back at the store enduring the torture all over again. This was one of the worst experiences of my life. I mean, I applaud anyone. I'm gonna be honest, if you're a restaurant owner who have built a successful restaurant business, because to be honest, it requires determination, resilience, and a level of toughness that I just didn't have. These people honestly are a different breed, surviving what felt like absolute torture. I have never given up on anything before, but this taught me so many valuable lessons that I want to share with you later in this video. After 3 years of grinding, trying to get everything I could to turn around, I had to face the harsh reality. This business wasn't working. Despite my best effort, I had been losing over $100,000 plus of my own money every year. That's nearly $500,000 gone with nothing to show for it but exhaustion, stress, frustration. And to make things worse, I lost time with my family, my newborn child, my daughter Alice. I lost a few years of her growing up because I was flying back and forth so much back to New Orleans, and I still owed money to the bank from the SBA loan that I had. The store was bleeding money, and I knew I had reached my breaking point. I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. It felt like I had tried everything. Every ounce of my energy and resources has gone into keeping that store alive, but after 3 years of constant setback, I realized there was no point in continuing. The more I held on to it, the more money I was losing. I made the difficult decision to list the Wingstop for sale through a broker. And at this point, I was so drained that I didn't even have the energy to negotiate or set a higher price. I just want to be done with it. The longer I held on to this store, the more money I would lose. I had already spent 3 years trying to save it. There was no sense in dragging it out any longer. Eventually, I found a buyer. They offered $15,000 for it. Yes, $15,000 for the store. That cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars to build. Honestly, it was a tough pill to swallow, but I took it. I could have negotiated for more. I knew the store was worth at least 100K, maybe 200K for all the asset that was there, the equipment, the build out. It was worth more than 200K, right? But I didn't really push for it. But honestly, at that point, I didn't care. I had lost so much money, time, energy, and the thought of holding on to that store any longer just wasn't worth it, man. The longer I kept it, the more I'll be sinking into the black hole of losses. I had to let it go. Sometime in business, you have to recognize when it's time to cut your losses. I wasn't going to get back the money I've lost, and there was no point in losing more just to hold on to something that wasn't working. The sale of the Wingstop was the end of a very tough chapter in my entrepreneur journey. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the time, the stress, and the toll it took on my health. Looking back, I realized I made a lot of mistakes. Mistakes that cost me dearly. Those mistakes also taught me some of the most important lessons I've learned today. So what did I learn from losing $900,000? Well, a lot. Because these are the lessons you don't get in school, okay? Even if you go to Harvard. So number one, do your homework. One of the biggest mistakes I made. I didn't do enough homework. Sure, I believe in the Wingstop brand. We see it everywhere. We love it. I love it. But I didn't dig deep into the actual business model or the competition in my specific area. I looked at the surface level, how successful the franchise was nationally, and assumed that would translate to my location, but it's not enough to believe in a brand. You have to know your market inside and out, from the foot traffic competition and even the local consumer habit. If I had taken more time to really study the business model in the market, I could have saved myself a lot of money. And talking about the kind of money that I could have bought 3 Lamborghinis instead of, I rushed head first and paid the price for it. Number 2, expect the unexpected. Running a business is unpredictable. I learned that the hard way. You think you got everything under control, your staff, your inventory, your day-to-day operation, but some things always goes wrong. I dealt with the equipment breakdown, constant staffing issue, and even a near fire in my friend's house caused by a greasy towel catching the fire in the dryer. No matter how much you plan, things will go wrong. That's just part of the game. And when they do, you have to be ready to adapt, to deal with the chaos and keep pushing forward. I wasn't prepared for how relentless the challenge would be. Had I known what I was getting into, I probably would have thought twice about starting it. I would probably be doing something else. I would rather just focus on the e-commerce business I already had. Number 3, cut your losses early. If there's one thing I wish I had done sooner, I should have cut my losses early. The store was bleeding $100K per year for 3 years. That's close to $500,000 I'll never get back. And yet I kept holding on, convinced that things would turn around if I just work a little harder or invest a little bit more. Here's the kicker. About a year before I sold the store for $15,000, I actually had an offer for $175,000. I turned it down. Why? Because I thought I could turn this thing around and make even more. Hindsight is always 20/20, right? Looking back, I would have taken that deal in a heartbeat, but at the time, I couldn't see it. Sometimes we get so caught up in trying to fix something that we don't realize is beyond our repair. The truth is, the longer you hold on to something that's draining you, the more damage it does. I could have walked away with a 6-figure deal, but instead I ended up selling it for $15,000 just to get out. So don't wait. If it's not working, pivot, sell, or cut your losses before it costs you even more. Number 4, this is the most important. No matter how great your business idea is or how hard you work, you can't do it all alone. I learned the painful way that if your team isn't on board, if they don't care about the business like you do, everything's gonna fall apart. I hired multiple general managers to run the store, but they treat it like a side gig. And honestly, I couldn't be everywhere at once. That's why having the right team is crucial. You need people who are just as invested as you are, people you can trust to run things right. If you don't have that, you end up putting out fires every day like I did, both literally and figuratively. I lost almost $1 million, enough to buy 3 Lamborghinis cash. But you know what? Those losses taught me more than any business school could. So if you're thinking about starting a business or already in the game, remember this. Do your homework, expect challenges, and know when to let go and build a team you can trust. It's not just about making money. It's about making smart decisions and knowing when to pivot before you lose more than you can afford. That's the real lesson. Losses aren't failure if you learn from them. Every setback is an opportunity to grow and do better next time. The $900K I lost wasn't just money. It was the cost of wisdom, the price of learning, and that's something no one can take away from me. The truth is, every successful person has had moments where they questioned everything, where they had to face failure head on. It's part of the journey. But what separates those who succeed from those who don't is the ability to get back up, learn from the lessons, and move forward stronger. So if there's one thing you take away from this, let it be this. It's not about the money you lose or the mistakes you make. It's about what you do next. It's about the resilience, about knowing when to pivot and when to walk away. And it's about understanding that the real value in any loss is a lesson you gain. If you're out there chasing your own dreams right now, I encourage you to reflect on your journey, whether you're facing setbacks, struggling to make a decision, or even on the verge of major wins. Keep moving forward, learn from every experience, and never lose sight of what truly matters. If this story resonated with you, if you ever faced moments where you felt like giving up, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below, tell me your story, share your thoughts. If you're ready to learn from real world experience like this, hit the subscribe button and make sure to turn on your notification. Just keep this conversation going, because the real lesson, honestly, isn't through textbooks. They're found in stories like this. And I'll see you in the next video.